The rain was falling lightly, with drops hitting the face, running down the gaunt face of the soldier who had just returned from the battlefield. In his hands was an old backpack, not filled with assets or valuables, but with memories of war, months soaked in sweat and blood. He stood there, in the rain, looking at the old house in his homeland, the place where, for so many years, the love for his family was the only thing he carried with him. He was no longer the victorious soldier he once was. No more uniform, no more grand battlefields. His family, and even his old friends, no longer recognized him. They saw him as a failure, a man of no worth after all those years of sacrifice. But in his eyes, there was a light that had not faded, his love for his young son and the promise he had sworn to keep until the end of his life. You will never lack the love of your father. Those words were like an unbreakable vow, a small light in the darkness, and no matter how the world turned its back on him, he would keep that promise, even if his hands were empty. Even if the house where his parents had passed was now nothing but ruins, he would still protect the most precious things. Alex stood there, in the rain, feeling each cold drop on his skin as if each was his own tear. He had just returned after so many years of absence, just discharged from the army. He was now trying to start his life anew in the hometown he had left behind when he went to fight. But this hometown was no longer the place he had left with hope. It had changed. His family had changed. A sense of loneliness enveloped him as he walked through the gate of the old house, which used to be filled with laughter and love. His mother had passed away, never able to see the son she had raised return. His father had died after a long illness. Before Alex could tell him he had kept his promise, to protect the country, to protect the family. His wife, Maria, had left him long ago. She no longer had the patience to wait for a husband who was constantly absent during the war years. She raised their child alone, struggling with a difficult life. And now, she had found new joy. Someone else, a man who wasn't far from home and didn't fill the void with old, faded battle letters. Alex couldn't blame her because his promises had been just words when everything around them was lacking. He returned feeling like a stranger in his own home, empty-handed, with a heart full of wounds that could never heal. His son, Daniel, was now grown. The boy was no longer the child he once held in his arms. Daniel looked at his father with a strange gaze, as if Alex was no longer the man he had once trusted and loved. The years of absence had distanced their bond. Alex could feel the coldness from his own son, and it shattered his heart. The memories of a child always running to hug his father when he came home seemed like a distant dream now. Alex looked at Daniel, saying nothing, just a glance full of pain and love that words could not express. The boy, Daniel, now a strong teenager, but his gaze was filled with complexity, as if he was holding on to some anger, some judgment toward his father. Where have you been all these years? That question didn't need to be spoken because the silence between father and son had already answered everything. When he first returned to the house after leaving the army, Alex never thought he would face such a situation. The home he had once called a haven was now nothing but a cold, moss-covered building. The air in the house was silent, as if all the sounds and feelings had long since left. He didn't even feel welcome. All he could do was walk through each room, staring at the old things, remembering a time long gone. That night, when the rain seemed endless, Alex sat in the living room, beside the dining table that once echoed with laughter, memories of family dinners, of afternoons spent together, now reduced to nothing but sighs. Without realizing it, he noticed old photographs, moments he thought had been forgotten. One photo of his family when he was still in the military, standing beside his wife and son, all smiling, happy. Those pictures felt like cuts to his heart, reminding him of everything that had passed, all the sacrifices he had made. But then, something strange happened. While cleaning the room, Alex discovered an old wooden box that he had never noticed before. It lay motionless in the corner of the cupboard, covered in dust, as if no one had touched it in years. When he opened it, a pile of old papers and unfamiliar letters fell out. On the papers were signs he had never seen before. These documents, on the surface, seemed like meaningless scraps of paper, but to Alex, they seemed to bring a glimmer of hope. With each page, he felt that something was wrong. The names, numbers, addresses, and events, everything seemed to connect into a story he had never heard of. A story about another war, not the one he had fought in, but one connected to his family. A secret that could change everything he knew about himself. The coldness of the papers made it impossible for Alex to ignore. He wondered, was this a joke, a mistake, or was it a secret his grandfather had left behind? A legacy he knew nothing about? Alex sat there quietly in the dark room of the old house, the papers still in front of him, like undeniable evidence. The first letter he opened, an old handwritten letter, neatly written in a script that Alex guessed his grandfather had written when he was still alive, suddenly made him realize something. In the letter, his grandfather talked about the early days of the family living there. the hardships of the war they endured, and a secret legacy he had hidden for all those years. Alex, if you are reading this letter, it may be time for you to know the truth. What you see today is not the home you thought it was. This is not just a place to hold old memories, it is a legacy of those who have gone through wars you cannot imagine. There is something that has been hidden in this house, and only true heirs can find it. His grandfather's words, though written long ago, seemed to penetrate Alex's soul, making it impossible for him to remain still. What his grandfather mentioned felt like a reminder, a teaching. A legacy was not just material possessions, it could be intangible values that Alex had never realized. He didn't know for sure if he was the heir, but it no longer mattered. What mattered was that he needed to understand this legacy, the things his grandfather had hidden, and, more importantly, what his family had sacrificed. The next day, Alex decided to begin his search. He rummaged through every corner of the old house, from the cracked walls, the moldy wooden shelves, to rooms that no one had stepped into. Last night, he hadn't been able to sleep, his mind spinning with thoughts about what his grandfather had written in the letter. He knew he couldn't let these secrets slip by without exploring them. Thus, his journey began, not just to search for the truth, but to find himself, to reclaim the value he had lost. The house was a treasure trove of memories and old objects, but inside it lay things he had never noticed before. Old photos of his grandfather, documents, old maps, everything seemed to have some connection that he had not yet unraveled. One thing that caught his attention was a wooden box he found in his grandfather's study. This box wasn't like anything else in the house, it was intricately carved and had a small lock. After some thought, Alex decided not to hesitate any longer. He took the small key his grandfather had left him, which was in a drawer in the desk. When the box opened, inside was an old notebook. Its pages yellowed, but every word on it seemed to contain an undisclosed secret. This notebook was unlike ordinary documents. It was like a journal that chronicled his grandfather's journey during the war years. Many pages recounted his grandfather's memories of participating in various campaigns. But some pages spoke of something very strange. In those delicate lines, Alex's grandfather wrote about a mysterious group of people he met during the war. They were not ordinary people, they were individuals connected to international organizations. People his grandfather had tried to protect because they possessed important information and documents that could change history. There was one passage in the notebook that made Alex stop. It spoke of a key his grandfather had hidden in a special place in the house. A place that only the heir could find. This realization made Alex uneasy, and he could no longer remain still. He realized that this house wasn't just a home for his family, it was also part of a bigger war his grandfather had been involved in. What his grandfather wrote about the organizations and the mysterious individuals made Alex feel something was wrong. They might have hidden this legacy for so many years, and maybe this was related to everything that had happened to his family, the conflicts he had never known about. Alex decided to continue his search. He couldn't let this house remain in the shadows of the past. He would do whatever it took to uncover the truth, even if it meant facing a battle he wasn't ready for. He couldn't go back to his old life. He couldn't continue living in memories or broken relationships. This journey wasn't just to save his family's legacy, but to save himself, to protect his son, and to ensure that no one could deny the value of the sacrifices he had made. There was one thing Alex knew for sure. He wouldn't stop until every secret was uncovered. And every promise his grandfather had made was fulfilled. His family's story, the story of soldiers, couldn't end in silence. Alex had to rise up, to continue the journey his grandfather had started. Only then would he find the true value of his own life. Since Alex opened the wooden box, everything in the house seemed to have a story to tell. No longer just random items. Each picture, each piece of paper, each keepsake seemed to hold a clue, a hidden link to the past that Alex had never known. The more he searched, the deeper he delved into the past, the more he felt that something was wrong. The memories of his grandfather, his family, and the sacrifices on the battlefield began to blur, as if a dark veil had covered everything. Each new discovery only confused him further. One afternoon, as the last light of the day faded, Alex found an old map in a drawer. This map wasn't an ordinary map. It outlined strange roads and locations that didn't appear on any geographical maps he had ever seen. It seemed like a guide, a trace of a journey his grandfather had taken, a journey that no one but his grandfather understood. The map was old, with faint lines, but Alex could still make out strange symbols that seemed to mark a group of people his grandfather had tried to protect. People connected to events that the world had never known. That night, as Alex sat across from the map, he realized that the symbols weren't just geographical markers. One of the symbols clearly pointed to a location he had heard about as a child. It was the forest to the west of the village, a place his grandfather had mentioned during hunting trips, but never clearly explained why he had to go there alone. That's where I keep the secrets no one else can know. His grandfather had said when he was alive, there are things outsiders can't understand. And sometimes we have to sacrifice to protect them. The truth about that forest, about what his grandfather had done and was hiding, began to clear in Alex's mind. He couldn't just sit there and imagine it. He had to go to that place. He had to face the truth that could change everything. The stories his grandfather had told, the secrets he had kept for so many years, were now waiting for him in a place no one else knew. The next day, Alex left the house and headed toward the forest. Even though he hadn't been back in years, the path to the forest was still imprinted in his memory. The feeling of returning to the past was hard to describe in words. In the damp morning air, with thick branches above him, he felt as if he was stepping into another world, one he had never fully understood. As Alex entered the forest, he began to notice strange signs. The ancient trees were marked with slashes, signs of a battle that had never ended. His heart surged with an indescribable feeling, as if someone was watching him. And in the eerie silence of the forest, Alex almost thought he could hear whispers from the past. He followed the signs, each step leading him closer to a deserted grave, where an old stone slab stood. The stone slab didn't have a name, only one faint inscription, the soldier who protected the legacy. That phrase made Alex's heart tighten. He realized that this grave wasn't his grandfather's, but it might belong to someone connected to him, someone his grandfather had protected, someone who could be the key to unraveling the secrets Alex was searching for. Then, something strange happened. As Alex bent down, his hand touched a large stone on the grave. A small noise rang out, and the stone rolled away, revealing a small wooden box underneath. The box was identical to the one his grandfather had left for him in the house. Alex opened the box, and inside was a letter, handwritten, along with some important documents. The letter, in his grandfather's familiar handwriting, described a secret deal his grandfather had been involved in during the war years. He had been forced to hide the family's legacy and important documents that could change the course of the war. He couldn't reveal what he knew, because doing so would endanger the family. All he could do was hide them in this forest, where only his family could find them. Alex felt the pain in those words. His grandfather had sacrificed not only for the country but also for the family, protecting the values that Alex was only now beginning to understand. Everything his grandfather had done, his silent actions, were now the things Alex had to protect. He couldn't let these secrets remain hidden, and he couldn't let his grandfather's sacrifices be forgotten. At that moment, Alex realized that the journey he had begun wasn't just about uncovering the truth, it was the responsibility of an heir. Someone who had to protect the legacy, protect the values his grandfather had left behind. But to do that, he would have to face powerful forces, people who might not easily let him get close to and unravel the secrets they had hidden for so many years. The afternoon light gradually faded, leaving a dark atmosphere in the forest. The leaves rustled softly in the cold wind, as if the ghosts of the past were silently watching Alex's every move. His heart raced, not out of fear, but because he knew he was standing at the threshold of a secret from which there was no turning back. He had just found the wooden box containing the important documents, but that was only the beginning. The biggest problem now was how to protect what he had just discovered when everything around him was becoming more dangerous than ever. When Alex returned to the house, he had no idea that he had fallen under the watchful eyes of those who had been manipulating and controlling significant events in the shadows. The documents his grandfather had hidden for so many years weren't ordinary pieces of information. They contained secrets that could change the political and military landscape, information that, if it fell into the wrong hands, could lead to unimaginable consequences. As he entered the house, Daniel, his son, was the first to notice that something was wrong. The boy looked at his father with a suspicious gaze. But this time, it wasn't the coldness and distance of before. Instead, there was worry, as if he sensed a danger lurking. But before Alex could explain, a knock on the door sounded. It was people he hadn't expected, people he didn't know had been watching him for so long. 3 men entered, all wearing dark suits and appearing to be figures of power. They didn't greet him or say a word. Alex immediately recognized that they weren't ordinary men. Their sharp looks, calm demeanor, but dangerous presence showed that this wasn't the first time they had handled situations like this. "We are looking for something your grandfather hid," one of the men said, his voice calm yet authoritative. "I believe you know what it is." Alex couldn't hide his surprise. He looked at the 3 men, and then, the truth began to unfold in his mind. The documents his grandfather had hidden weren't just trivial things. They were important pieces of a larger puzzle that could topple old systems. Dark secrets that the world feared. "My grandfather is no longer alive, and I have no intention of betraying my family's legacy," Alex replied, his voice calm, but inside, he couldn't hide the tension. "If you're looking for something from me, I can't help you." The leader of the group didn't respond immediately. He just stared at Alex, his gaze cold. Then he pulled an envelope from his jacket and placed it on the table. This is an offer, but you must understand that it cannot be changed. We have ways to make you cooperate, the man said. Alex looked at the envelope, then back at the man. He didn't open it right away but kept silent, feeling the danger around him. But at that moment, Daniel, his son, stood beside him, looking at the three strangers with concern. Dad, what are we going to do? Daniel asked, his voice filled with worry. Alex didn't answer right away. He looked at his son, his eyes full of determination. He had once thought protecting his family was the most important thing. But now, protecting his grandfather's legacy, protecting his family's values, seemed more important than his own safety. Alex knew that if he didn't act immediately, these secrets would never be known, and the forces his grandfather had fought against for so many years would take the upper hand. We have nothing to exchange, Alex said firmly. If you want these documents, you'll have to take them from me. A silence filled the room. The three men didn't respond immediately, but instead, they exchanged glances, as if they were accustomed to negotiations like this. One of them stood up and walked toward the window, staring outside, as if considering a decision. We won't let you ruin our plans, the man said coldly. If you don't cooperate, there will be serious consequences. Those consequences will come from you, not me, Alex replied, his determination becoming even clearer in his eyes. Daniel looked at his father with a look full of worry. He didn't understand everything, but he sensed the growing tension and danger. The only question left in his mind was whether his father could protect the family from this threat. Just then, a noise came from the yard outside. The sound was like a warning. Alex looked out the window, where a familiar figure appeared in the distance, Maria, his ex-wife. She was standing outside, her eyes full of worry as she saw the scene inside the house. Alex didn't know why she was there, but her appearance was a sign that something bigger was coming. When Maria entered the house, everything became even more tense. She saw the strange men. Then her eyes moved from Alex to Daniel, fear slowly creeping into her expression. Alex, I don't understand what's happening. Is something serious going on? Maria spoke, her voice trembling. The men didn't speak, but their eyes clearly showed irritation. One of them turned to look at Maria and said in a threatening tone, "You have no right to interfere with this matter. This is our business." Maria paused for a moment, then looked at Alex with confusion. She understood that this wasn't simple, but seeing the determination in Alex's eyes, she suddenly realized that he was no longer a man full of fear. He had decided to stand against everything that threatened his family. "My family will not let you harm us," Alex said, his voice deep and powerful. A silent battle had just begun. The men didn't realize that they had underestimated Alex's determination. What his grandfather left behind wasn't just documents. It was a legacy of resilience and sacrifice. And Alex would protect that legacy with everything he had. The light from the oil lamp in the room cast a dim glow over the tense faces. At that moment, Alex realized that the battle he was facing wasn't just one against evil people, but rather, a battle against the very truth itself. The secrets his grandfather had hidden weren't just documents tucked away in the forest. They were truths that could completely change everything Alex knew about his family, and perhaps even the country he had fought for. When Maria stepped into the room, the tension in the air grew heavier. Alex looked at her as if she was a stranger, her eyes full of worry and doubt. But there was something in her gaze that made him realize she knew something he didn't. She wasn't just his ex-wife anymore, she was part of a story that Alex had yet to fully understand. He could feel something passing between them, an unspoken knowledge, a truth that had always been there but was just out of his reach. "Maria, why are you here?" Alex asked, his voice unable to hide the tension. But Maria just stood there, silent for a moment, before she looked at the three men in the room. "I know who you are," she said in a cold, steady voice, "and I know what you're looking for." That was the moment Alex would never forget. Maria spoke words that completely blindsided him. These men weren't here just to threaten his family. They were after something, but it wasn't just any ordinary asset they were after. It was something much deeper, and Maria was the one holding the key. She stood still for a beat, her eyes searching for some kind of reassurance from Alex. But all that met her was silence. Then, without hesitation, she turned to face the three men. "We know what you're after, the legacy my grandfather left behind. But you don't know that legacy didn't just belong to him." Alex was left in utter confusion, staring at her with eyes wide open. Everything he had thought he understood about his family, about his grandfather, suddenly seemed meaningless. The man he had always revered, his grandfather, had been involved in a secret network Alex couldn't even begin to fathom. And Maria, his ex-wife, the one he had believed was a part of a broken past, was now revealed to be holding an integral piece of the puzzle he had been trying to solve. "What are you talking about?" Alex asked, struggling to process the shock. Maria let out a long breath before she walked over to the table, where the documents Alex had discovered lay scattered. She calmly picked up one letter. But it wasn't from his grandfather. This one was different, written by hand in a familiar script that Alex immediately recognized. It was Maria's handwriting. The letter revealed something that Alex hadn't expected. Maria wasn't just Alex's wife. She had been a part of a much larger plan, one his grandfather had kept hidden. She was the only one who had access to the crucial documents his grandfather had hidden. And that explained why she never wanted Alex to know the truth. At that moment, everything Alex thought he knew about his grandfather, his family, and the legacy he was meant to protect began to fall apart. His grandfather, whom Alex had always idolized, had been involved in a secretive web of power and influence that Alex had never suspected. And Maria, his ex-wife, who had always seemed distant, was now revealed to be a key player in a game much larger than Alex could have ever imagined. Maria, her voice steady, turned to Alex. "This is the truth you need to know. Your grandfather's legacy isn't just in the documents he hid. It's part of a network, a secret that's been protected for generations. And now it's your turn to decide if you want to be a part of this fight." Alex stood frozen, his mind racing. He could feel the walls closing in on him, as if he was standing at a crossroads, caught between a past he thought he understood and a truth that was far more complex. The choices in front of him now were monumental. He had to decide whether to take up the legacy his grandfather had left behind or walk away from it all. Maria, now looking at him with a steady gaze, continued, "You can't just ignore this. The legacy your grandfather hid is not just about the past. It's about the future, and if you don't act, the forces who are after this will take everything from you." Alex felt as though everything was unraveling in front of him. The life he had built, the promises he had made, and the future he had hoped for were now overshadowed by secrets that had been buried for generations. He realized that this was no longer just about protecting his family or reclaiming his past. It was a battle to protect the very future of everything he held dear. As the tension in the room reached its peak, Alex made a decision. He couldn't back down. He had to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. He had to fight not only for his family, but for everything his grandfather had sacrificed, for the values that had been passed down to him, even in secrecy. Turning to Maria, Alex said, his voice steady and full of resolve, "If this is the fight we're meant to face, then I'll stand with you. We will protect this legacy. We will uncover the truth, and we will ensure that the sacrifices made by those who came before us will not be in vain." The room was silent for a moment, and then Maria nodded, the weight of the decision between them clear. This was no longer just about family or a legacy. It was about protecting the truth and ensuring that the darkness of the past didn't swallow them all. The game had changed. The stakes were higher than ever. And now, Alex had no choice but to fight for the future, no matter what it took. Since Alex opened the wooden box, everything had changed. What he thought was the end of a painful chapter now opened up into a new journey. One that not only required resilience but also courage and sacrifice. But before he could step into this battle, he had to face a painful truth, all the values he had once believed in, about family, love, and those he had revered, might be hiding behind a veil of secrecy. Maria, his ex-wife, the one who had always been caught between the past and the present, had now become an indispensable part of this journey. She was the bridge between memories and secrets that had never been revealed. But the truth she unveiled wasn't just a story about family or legacy, it was a story about a covert network. Life or death decisions that even Alex's grandfather had to make sacrifices to protect. Step by step, piece by piece, Alex began to realize that everything his grandfather had done wasn't driven by greed or selfishness. He had done it all for family, for the future of the generations to come, and for a better life for everyone Alex loved. The legacy his grandfather left behind wasn't just about documents or material relics, it was a silent battle. One that Alex's grandfather had fought against powerful forces that, if not confronted, could swallow everything. "You have to understand," Maria said in a late-night conversation, after the lights in the house had dimmed, leaving only the flickering glow of an oil lamp. "Your grandfather wasn't just a soldier. He was a protector of a system. And what you're doing now is completing the mission he couldn't finish. The secrets he left behind are not a burden. They're an opportunity for you and your family to stand strong." But not everyone realized the importance of this legacy. The ones hunting for the documents and information his grandfather had hidden throughout the years weren't going to give up easily. They wanted to control what Alex now possessed, and they would do whatever it took to claim it. They knew that these documents could change the world's balance, creating a storm that even governments and armies would fear. So, while Alex and Maria had begun to decode some of the secrets his grandfather left behind, the battle wasn't going to end just with the truth. This battle had turned into a fight for the survival of the very values they had protected. for their family and their community. The forces after these documents wouldn't stop until they had everything they needed. The next day, Alex decided he couldn't wait any longer. He couldn't stand on the sidelines anymore. He couldn't let these dark forces manipulate the fate of his family. He knew that this fight wasn't just about protecting wealth or power. This was a fight to protect what was most important, the values of love, sacrifice, and the promise his grandfather had kept his entire life. He couldn't do this alone. Maria, though separated from him for so long, was now the most important ally he had. And even though Daniel, his son, was still young, the maturity in his eyes made Alex realize that his son wasn't just someone to protect. He was someone who would continue this legacy in the future. "Dad, I want to help you," Daniel said, his voice full of resolve as he stood beside Alex in the old house. He was no longer the child who needed protection. He was part of this fight. And the truth Alex had just discovered was a part of a bigger story that the entire family had to be involved in. To protect the family legacy, Alex took action. The important documents his grandfather had hidden were scattered in several locations. They weren't just hidden in old houses or abandoned forests, but were buried in underground treasures that even the men who were chasing him couldn't have predicted. Alex and Maria had decided to uncover the remaining parts of this legacy. Not only to protect their family but to ensure that no evil forces would be able to use them for their own gain. Little by little, their efforts began to make a difference. Those who had once seen Alex as a failure now had to reevaluate their view. The men who were after his family's documents began to sense the resilience and strength that Alex's family had that they had once underestimated. Not everything was easy, but every time Alex and his family got closer to the truth, they became stronger. One night, when they discovered a hidden cache of documents in an old cellar, Alex stood before the yellowed pages and felt the power of the legacy his grandfather had left behind. It wasn't just about the wars of the past, it was about what he needed to do to protect his family, his community, and the world from those forces who wanted to seize it all. His grandfather's sacrifice was now exonerated. Alex understood that everything his grandfather had done, every sacrifice, was to protect the values Alex was now holding. And now, it was Alex's turn to continue protecting that legacy, not just for his family, but for the future. And it was in that very document cache that Alex discovered something significant, his grandfather's final promise. One he had never had the chance to speak aloud. A legacy isn't just about material wealth. It's about love, sacrifice, and the values we leave behind for the next generation. At that moment, Alex realized that his grandfather's legacy wasn't something that could be measured in money or power. It was an invaluable gift that he had to protect, and he would never allow it to be taken away, no matter what danger he had to face. Alex's family stood strong, not only because they had uncovered the truth, but because they had restored the real value of their legacy. The resilience, love, and silent sacrifices had allowed them to overcome every challenge. Now, they were ready for an even greater battle, not just to protect their family legacy, but to safeguard all the values they had built. As Alex looked back on everything that had happened, it felt like a long, painful journey, but in the end, it all led him to one simple yet profound truth. The true value of a person isn't in wealth or fame. It's in the sacrifices and the promises they keep. Each step of this journey, Alex had faced deceit, conspiracies he never imagined, and uncovered truths not only about his grandfather but also about himself. When he faced the greatest challenges, from protecting his family to preserving his grandfather's legacy, he wasn't just an old soldier returning from battle. He was someone standing up against the darkness, fighting against the forces that wanted to destroy everything he loved. What Alex had protected wasn't just documents, power, or influence. He had protected intangible values, love, sacrifice, and loyalty to the promises his grandfather had made. It was these values that helped him stand firm and overcome the temptations and challenges that came his way. When everything finally settled down, when the men searching for the documents were defeated, Alex looked at what remained. He didn't find satisfaction in victory. What he found was a sense of relief, a peaceful feeling when he realized that, in the end, the most important things in life aren't winning against enemies. It's keeping the values we hold dear. Maria, though his ex-wife, had become an important companion in this journey. She had helped him see not only the truth about his grandfather but also helped him understand himself. The days of separation between them were no longer important. They had overcome great challenges, and now they could look back and appreciate what had made their lives. No, it wasn't perfection, but decisions, sacrifices, and persistence. Daniel, Alex's son, had grown. The boy was no longer just someone in need of protection. He was a person who stood with his father, protecting the family's values. Looking into his eyes, Alex realized that the continuation of this legacy wasn't just about safeguarding documents or information. The most important thing was protecting what their family had built over the years. What his grandfather had sacrificed to preserve wasn't material wealth, it was love, sacrifice, and loyalty to the family. After everything, Alex knew that he had not only redeemed himself but had helped his entire family restore the values they had lost. His grandfather's sacrifices during the war, his silent actions, now made perfect sense. Every step in this journey wasn't just a family protection action, it was a lesson about loyalty, sacrifice, and the meaning of legacy. Alex stood by the window of the old house, looking out at the bright sky, the morning light shining through the leaves. He knew that no matter how life changed, no matter what challenges lay ahead, what he had experienced would always be the most important part of his life. There is no victory greater than keeping true to the values and promises we hold. Dad, what do we do next? Daniel asked, his voice full of maturity. Alex smiled, looking at his son, and replied, "We'll continue protecting what we have, protecting the family, and protecting the values my grandfather left behind. Nothing is more important than keeping these things safe." Maria stood beside them, saying nothing, but her eyes brightened as if she had found a part of the truth she had been searching for all this time. She knew that they wouldn't just protect their family, they would protect the future of their son as well. A future not controlled by the ghosts of the past or dark forces. Alex looked out the window, feeling an oddly comforting peace. No words could fully describe that feeling. He knew that, no matter how life went on, he and his family had completed an important part of this journey. A part of the legacy that wasn't just about documents or material things, but resilience, love, and silent sacrifice. At that moment, Alex realized one thing: the true value of a soldier isn't in victory or defeat. It's in keeping promises, protecting what's most important, no matter how difficult life gets. Question for the audience: what about you? Would you be willing to sacrifice everything to protect the values you believe in? And if you were in Alex's shoes, what would you do when faced with the truth? When everything you love is under threat? Please share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit the like button if this story inspires you.